Hi, this is Pat Sullivan from the Limerick Post Show. I'm here with Chris Ward, a singer-songwriter from Limerick. Chris, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Good, how are you, Keen? Thanks for having me.
No problem, no problem. So you're here today to really talk about your new single that's coming out, Colder. Would you like to talk a bit about the song?
Yeah, sure, yeah. Funny story about Colder, actually. I when I first started writing it, it was actually just an hour before I was supposed to record a demo for it. So I'd arranged a studio session to record the demo for it. And I just picked up, I only got the guitar recently, I just picked it up and I just kind of wrote it in like 10, 15 minutes. And I just knew I really liked it. And I thought I'd just throw a demo down. And then it ended up going on the EP in the end as well. Um, it's kind of like the message of the song. It's kind of like instead of it being like a song that's like, oh, like we've broken up and it's, it's a disaster. It's more like kind of like a slow degradation. So it's like those kind of things that you see when not even necessarily a romantic relationship, like when a relationship is kind of coming apart, and like there's those little subtleties of the little bits of resentment and kind of like the how can I describe it? All that kind of water that's under the bridge, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah,
that's kind of what the song is dealing with, like a relationship where there's just lots of little issues that have come along. That's kind of what it's dealing with, theme wise.
yeah. And this is your second single that you're releasing. Your first single last year, Lost Tonight. How did it feel as a singer or songwriter to finally get something out, music out there for people to listen to? Listen to Chris Ward's new song. How does it feel to get that out there?
Oh well, that is a good question. It was like 100 different mixed emotions, I'd say. I was incredibly excited, incredibly nervous. But yeah, it was great. I mean, it's just the whole build up to it is always kind of like is always kind of stressful, checking your emails, sending loads of emails, spending hours on on Gmail, sending them, and then checking your pre-saves on Spotify and all that. But yeah, it was very exciting. The response was really good to it as well. I'd waited a long time to release it because just the COVID situation kind of delayed the release. So yeah, it felt great. It was something very, it was kind of like a relief in a way, to finally
Mhm.
do it because I was sitting on the body of work for so long.
And you finally got out there, your name's on it. So like, like a lot of people writing books, they want to get it out there. So it must have been like overwhelming. We were kind of like thinking, is this actually real as a singer songwriter to finally get it out there? Was that your first kind of feeling?
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of surreal aspect to it because it takes so long to do all this stuff. Like there's a lot of work that goes into it, I don't think people see on the outside. It's like you have to write the song, that takes time, record demos of the song, go into the studio, that takes days and days of work to get the songs right, mixing, mastering, production at like different like brand assets, photos, videos, all that kind of stuff. Like it takes so long and you're waiting for the right time. So when it finally does happen, it's just like it's hard to believe it's all you're actually there, especially the first time releasing something. It's kind of like a shock, you know
Yeah.
and you're just thinking like, I wonder do people like it or not. There's an aspect of definitely like nerves to it. It's a little bit anxiety inducing because I put so much effort into it and it's finally getting out there.
Yeah. And where did your like passion for music come from? Like when did it start? Why get into this area? It is like obviously a challenging area, so you need a lot of love for it to really go for it and confidence. So where did that passion come from for music?
um the first step into it, well, I suppose there's a couple of steps. The first step was my dad won a guitar one time at some kind of competition. And when I was very young, probably 5 or 6, I was messing around with it, but I couldn't play it. I just liked it and I played around with it. Then years later, I was supposed to go to a Jay-Z concert with my aunt, right? But then she realized, oh wait, Jay-Z is kind of explicit for someone who's my age. And she's like, actually, I don't think we can really go. So to make it up for me, she got me a guitar. And that was when I was like 11 or 12. And so I got the guitar, I started doing lessons, didn't like it very much. And so I didn't like it at all at first. And then when I was 14, I got really into Nirvana and I still had that guitar lying around. And so I started teaching myself then again, starting from scratch. And I just fell in love with it. And then later that summer, I wanted to start a band, but I couldn't find any band members, because there's just not much of a pool to pull from. I went to lessons, and there was no music class at the time or anything. So like there wasn't really many musicians I knew. And so I ended up kind of going about it alone and started busking. And yeah, I saved up to record this and played tons of venues and stuff. And yeah, it's just it's a strange old thing to do, to be honest with you. It's a strange, but like it's worth it because like there's so much joy in it, you know, for people around you too, like, especially with the busking, you know, because like kids, for example, just love the music on the street, and there's something that's really rewarding about it,
Yeah,
you know. So it's like sometimes, especially during COVID now, it would be you'd have some tough conversations with yourself where you're thinking like, you know, should I keep going through with this? Like, should I keep doing this? Because the whole industry got shut down in like a day, pretty much, you know,
yeah,
after what was it, like around the 10th or 11th of March, like the whole industry just went down the toilet, like, and it was like that was a bit of like a shock to the system, you know. So I went to college and I started studying music production and things like that, and so that definitely made me fall in love with it again. And now getting to perform again is definitely making it ring true that it's really back and things are getting back to normal. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the writing aspect of it is one of the best parts too. Like that's definitely something I have a real passion for, is the actual songwriting part. And it's like sometimes it can be a strange old thing, because sometimes it's like it can make you feel really kind of like anxious about what you're writing, because it's like you're kind of looking deep into yourself, if that makes any sense.
yeah,
And like that can be kind of challenging at times. So yeah, the whole thing is kind of like it's a strange, hard to describe kind of feeling, the whole thing, because it's so like up in the air. Sometimes it feels very like you don't know what you're doing or what's going on, or you know what the future holds. But then there's so many great moments, and that's what I think makes it worth it.
yeah. And busking, how old were you when you first started that? I mean, that must have been, that's tough going onto the streets singing. If that's where that where you started, really. That's kind of like your main starting point, obviously, before releasing songs and doing venues. So how scary was it? Was it scary, or was it like exciting to do, to step onto the streets and start singing to people on the streets? What would you describe your feelings about it?
I'd say with the busking, what happened was I just finished TY, and this is before I dropped out, because I dropped out of school later, and I went back to college a year ago. But anyway, I was working in a Moira summer camp with kids, and I well basically what I did was I knew I wanted to start, but I was terrified of doing it. To be honest with you, like I was very scared at the start, but I set a date for myself that I was going to force myself to stick by, regardless of how I felt about it, and just not have a conversation with myself about it. Just force myself to do it. And the first day I did it, it was like it was somewhere in July 2016 is when I first did it, and I couldn't believe it, like because when I first did it, I remember I probably played for an hour and a half or something. I just probably had 10 songs, I'd say, a couple of Bob Dylan songs and maybe one or two others. And I remember I made like 13 euro or something. And like I was getting paid very little in that other job. So like when I made it, I was like shocked by it, you know.
Yeah,
I'll never forget that moment, because like I didn't even, when I started doing it, like money wasn't even a concept. It was just about doing it and just trying to make something out of it and just see what would happen. And then when I first did it, I was like, there was like a eureka moment. It was just like, wow, this is great, you know. And just like the enjoyment from it is just like amazing, because it's so, what I love about it is that it's so it's spontaneous, and like you never know what's going to happen, and that's what kind of keeps it exciting, you know. Some
yeah,
days you can have a terrible day, but then those terrible days are, you know, contrasted to like amazing days. You can have amazing experiences where you meet people who are booking you for gigs, or they want to listen to your music, or so and so. And like that's what I love about it. You know, it's how so unpredictable, you know. And that's what I find is so refreshing about it, because no day is ever the same. And
yeah,
so yeah, the busking was really scared to start, but now it's like I'm not even a bit scared anymore. You know, I'm so used to doing it now. It's just like second nature. I mean, sometimes I'd be there busking, and like I'll just be playing away, and I'll start thinking away to myself in my own world while I'm doing it. It's not even thinking about it anymore. I think, did I leave the oven on before I left the house? You know what I mean?
yeah,
That's how second nature it is now when I'm playing out there. It's just like breathing.
yeah. And like any musicians, do you have any musicians that you consider an inspiration for you in a way to start playing music? Do you have anyone that would inspire you to do that?
I remember when I first started, the guy who was teaching me guitar when I wasn't so into it, his name was Mike Hogan, and he had a band called Leading Armies, and I really loved them at the time, this local Limerick band. And like when I first started on the open mic scene in 2016, Emma Langford was a great support. She was a great inspiration. We had a lot of conversations together, and she gave me good advice. Um, there's kind of like a lot of people around. Even just I mean, inspiration comes so many places. Like even with I've recently with the kind of the hip hop scene in Limerick, the rap scene in Limerick, I'm finding great inspiration coming from that because it's just what they're doing is so great and so different, and I think it's so unique, and they're making a great, they're making a great scene for the hip
Yeah,
hop, like people like Hazy Haze and Strange Boy and Citrus Fresh. I think the stuff they're doing is so great because they have their identity stamped right into the music, and I think it's so original. Things like that. I mean, there's great inspiration. I think the Irish music scene is just fantastic and an under tapped resource
yeah,
because there's so many talented musicians and so many great creatives, and yeah, it blows my mind actually. Even in like somewhere like Limerick, it's not necessarily a huge place, but like the amount of talent in the city is just like astronomically huge,
yeah,
And so a lot of that stuff is definitely inspiration when you see people achieve things that, like even the other day, Strange Boy being on Tommy Tiernan's show, that was really inspiring because like I used to live beside him, as well, and like I'd hear him playing Eminem and things like that, like I'd hear it through the walls, and like it's just crazy how you can see people just their stars just rising so quick, and it's very inspiring. I think that especially the local music.
yeah. And like I said, local music, Strange Boy and Tommy Tim show is on the main RT, he's on the main stage, kind of in a way, plays music out there. What about other local people like yourself, local singer songwriters? What kind of advice would you give them if they want to pursue music? Write songs, write their own songs, sing them. What kind of advice would you give them to start? Because confidence wise, like I said, would probably prevent a lot of people, especially young people, from doing it. But what advice would you give them to overcome those barriers?
I'd say I definitely order a few pieces of advice that I think are essential. One of them would definitely be to force yourself to do it. Because I remember the first time I sang a song in front of people that I vomited after, and I did a terrible job as well. You know what I mean? It was terrible, but it's just like you have to keep pushing through. That's the main thing through all of it. You have to keep forcing yourself because it's not always going to feel good. Your body's going to
Give
not want you to put yourself in what you perceive as danger, which is being out in front of those people, but you just have to force yourself. And the more you force yourself, the easier it gets. And another thing too, especially with the songwriting and in the studio, is trust the process. Because there was times too I was recording this, so I wasn't sure what was happening. And like I'd come out of the studio some days feeling deflated and like I don't know if this is going to be good but then in the end it always works out. But there's loads of points, in kind of like the middle of the whole process where it meanders, and
yeah,
like you just need to have trust in it because it will come out better than you expect. And also live in the moment is another one for sure, because especially in a game like this, in any kind of creative field, I think thinking too far ahead is really detrimental, and you need to try live in the moment. Obviously plan as well, but don't obsess over things you can't control. You know what I mean?
yeah. And
Yeah.
now that everything's kind of opening up again this year, events, especially like you have the Limerick Summer Festival in summer as well. The music is coming back, especially in Limerick. Where do you see yourself involved in those kind of events? Moving forward, more for you playing at venues and stuff. Like, where do you see this year taking you, music?
Well, I'm putting a band together at the moment, and I plan on doing a live show somewhere in Limerick, in either Dolan's or a commercial record room, somewhere like that. And when I'm launching the full EP, sort of the actual full 4 tracks. And yeah, I'd love to, get that band together, practice enough so that we're fairly tight ship. I'd love to get some good support slots around, and of course, I'd love to play at some festivals too, but got to take one step at a time.
Yeah, and you just have to come really back to it. Like I said, after the COVID pandemic, really shut everything down after like just one day it was gone.
Yeah.
So like mentally as well, when you said that, like mentally the music when it was shut down straight away, like how down were you? Like how broken were you that industry just kind of stopped, halted, gone, and you were just beginning to like you were writing music at the time, weren't you? Is that right?
Yeah, I am pretty much always writing at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when it was kind of all gone, how did that make you feel writing wise? Like, did you kind of feel deflated about quitting writing music altogether at that point?
When it first happened, yeah, I definitely got pretty down about it, to be honest with you. It made me lose hope a lot in the industry and in doing this as a career, because a lot of it ended it started right around Patrick's Day. I had lots of gigs lined up in the months to come that took, a good few years to get in the door. And
Yeah.
then a lot of those bars shut down during COVID, because they weren't getting business and they couldn't keep up. They couldn't keep going. In terms of the writing, I definitely still wrote a bit, but at the start of it, definitely, I felt so deflated about it. I just didn't, I just felt too uninspired. It's just, it's the uncertainty that's the problem.
Yeah.
That was the biggest issue, I think. And it's like, I understand that it had to be done, but it's just the uncertainty of not knowing when it's going to come back that makes it so difficult, because you feel like you're on a knife's edge,
Yeah.
because like we all thought at the start it'll be back by summer, like
Yeah. I remember
it's
that.
going to be over. It'll be like, it will blow over, but then it ended up just keep going forever. And so you kind of have to sit back and reassess, I think.
Yeah. And anyway, before I let you go, just bring it back to Colder again, because that's your next single that's coming out. Do you want to give more details on it, like release dates, stuff like that, before we hit?
Yeah, sure. Well, Colder, it's actually coming out the 25th. So it's coming out tomorrow. Well, and whenever this is, it's coming out Friday the 25th, just so whenever this is broadcasted, still is relevant. It's going to be on Spotify, Apple Music, all of those regular places you get your music. Colder will be on there. Yeah, I think people will like it. I think they'll relate to it. I think everyone has a situation where like they get into a relationship with someone, or a relationship with your father or your mother falls apart for whatever reason. And it's like those difficult conversations you don't want to have, where like there's things there that like they hurt, that hurt you, but you can't talk about them with those people. That's kind of what the song is touching on.
Yeah.
I think everyone can relate to that in some way or another.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Chris. Thanks for the chat, and I wish you luck with the next single, and obviously the rest of the year with things opening up. And I hope you and your band get together and play some music and have a good time, obviously, and get back right on track. So thanks again.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, man.
No bother. Thank you.